Hi and welcome to my channel, and welcome to me walking down to Hollow Ponds in East London to do a lens test between the 1939 Summitar, the 1950s Soviet fed Industar 10 and the Canon 50mm f1.8. Let's get into it. Okay, when I test lenses, I try to test them from a very real-world viewpoint. I'm not going to be talking about how many lines per millimeter they resolve or any of the superlatives that people go on about how fantastic the glow is from a lens. Yeah, some lenses glow nicely and some don't, but it's how useful they are in an everyday photographic situation, and that's really what I want to drill down onto with this video. So, back to Hollow Ponds. The Industar f2 dates from probably the early 50s and is easily the cheapest out of the three lenses. You probably pay around £60 for one in good condition. I got mine kind of free on the front of a Fed 2, but I was quite lucky in that respect. The middle lens of the group is the Canon f1.8 50mm, which I got from Japan and was just over £200. And then the proper Leica equivalent is the 50mm Summitar, which I've just bought, which costs me pushing £300. So there's a good spread there, and we'll be taking a look at the results from all of them. So I've wandered round Hollow Ponds, changing lenses at a ridiculous rate for a rangefinder camera. I'm finding that juggling three lenses is not the easiest thing in the world. So we will take back everything. I'm absolutely surrounded by geese at the moment, and they're coming to have a look at what I'm doing, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to go back and develop the films and see what the results are. I've had lovely conversations with all kinds of people, walking dogs and walking cameras, and wonderful relaxing day. So back to find out what the results are. My first test subject was a bit of children's climbing apparatus, or old logs, which I've photographed before, and I photographed with all three lenses, although I actually forgot to thoroughly wind on after loading the film. So in fact, the very first image that was shot on the Industar, there was actually only half an image there. So I'm actually only going to show you half of all the other images so that you can compare the sharpness of that. But yeah, that was my bad. This is a long time SLR user, just getting used to rangefinders, and in particular getting used to Barnack rangefinders. First off, we have the Industar. Now this has got really good contrast, but it's only really when you see it in comparison to the others that you see there's not quite so much critical sharpness. This is a coated Industar, so actually the contrast is very, very good indeed on this lens, and I think that to some degree makes up for the fact that it's not as critically sharp as you will see in a moment that the other two are, but it's still easily sharp enough, and I think for 90% of shooting situations it's pretty good, but we'll see how it performs in other tests onto the Canon. The first thing that hits you is that the design of the Canon, which is probably from the mid-50s, is actually a lot more modern than either the Industar or the Summitar. My version, which is badged Canon, but is very similar to the Serinar badged Canons that came before it, actually has a 10-blade aperture like the Scimitar. I'm not sure whether later ones had this, but this actually makes any out-of-focus highlight, bokeh if you like, very smooth and very nice. I think you can see here that the sharpness as well as the contrast is actually very, very high with the Canon f1.8. And now my most recently acquired lens. This is my Summitar from 1939. This is a completely uncoated lens with the 10-blade aperture, which I believe they had up until 1947, although by the time they got to 1947 they were coated, and the coated 10-blade versions are very, very sought after. This is a lens that I didn't expect to have a great deal of contrast, and in many respects I wasn't surprised. Yes, the contrast is lower than it is with either of the other two coated lenses, but the sharpness is really quite exceptional. I'll have it up on the screen, but this was shot at f8 as the other two lenses were, and it is, I think, at least on a level with the Canon, if not a little bit better. Certainly not miles better, but I think a bit better. A bit of a shock came with this image, which was to test shooting into the light, and this is from the Fed Industar. Now, I normally shoot this lens with a hood, but as I don't have a hood for the Scimitar yet, I shot all three without hoods, and the only one out of these three images that was marred, if you like to look at it that way, by flare was the one from the Fed. Both the Canon that you see here and the Scimitar afterwards are both sharp and really without a hint of flare on them. That was something I wasn't expecting. I was trying to get an image from each lens on each subject. However, I failed on several occasions here, in this instance because I just didn't get sharp focus with the Canon. So this image that you're seeing here is from the Scimitar and is absolutely bitingly sharp, and has a very nice range of tones and a real Leica glow. There, I did it. I slipped into using the old trope of glow, but there's not really any other way I can describe the very, very subtle bleed of the highlights into the shadows that the uncoated older lens designs from Ernst Litz give you. At this point, I should talk a little about ergonomics and handling. The little Fed Industar is the lightest of the three lenses, at just 110 grams. The Scimitar that you see pictured on screen at the moment is about 100 grams heavier, at 212 grams. And by a huge long way heavier is the great big fatty bum that is the Canon 1.8, which is nearly 300 grams. So if weight and indeed bulk are the chief criterion for selecting lenses, then the little Industar wins hands down. It's shorter than the collapsible Summitar, and of course it doesn't require the muscles of a weightlifter as the Canon does. I know later Canon f1.8 lenses are much lighter than this. My early one really is a bruiser, and it weighs the front of the camera down and can be a bit of a strain around the neck after a day's shooting. I find it completely impossible to separate the sharpness of the Canon in the image that you can see at the moment with the sharpness from the Leica Summitar, which you can see in the image which I'm just coming on to. And in that I think they're pretty much equal, and I think if you want a modern reproduction lens, or at least a little bit more modern, it will still glow a bit, I would go for the Canon, although you miss out on that wonderful ethereal glow of the Scimitar wide open. But the winner in all this, I think, is the little Fed. Okay, so it's not as fast as the other two lenses, and it's not quite as sharp as the other two lenses, but it's tiny and it costs way less than the other two lenses. Now I'm happy that I have all three of these 50mm. They're all great for different things. The one that will go with me in my pocket with my Leica 3B when I'm not even expecting to take photographs, but just on the off chance, will be the Fed, because it's probably the best combination of all the features. But the Scimitar has a luxury feel and a smoothness that I'm glad's in the bag. And of course the Canon is just a brilliant all-rounder. So if you've enjoyed this video, why not hit the like button? You know you want to. And if you've enjoyed it quite a lot, then why not subscribe? Does the channel a hell of a lot of good. You'll find links to my Patreon and to buy me a cup of coffee and all kinds of things in the description. So until I see you again, take care of yourselves, and keep taking pictures.